Through at the top of the program, the leadership change in the coalition parties in Canberra today, new Nationals leadership and new Liberal Party leadership. We talked about what might be happening in a policy sense. David Littleproud, the new Nationals leader, says the Nationals are already centrist and he doesn't see much need for change. But Peter Dutton, he's going to change the way the Liberals go about things. Have a look.
We won't be Labor light. We'll propose strong policy to make the lives of Australians better and to provide more security to them. Our policies will be squarely aimed at the forgotten Australians in the suburbs across regional Australia, the families and small businesses whose lot the Labor Party will have made more difficult. Under my leadership, the Liberal Party will be true to our values that have seen us win successive elections over the course of the last quarter of a century.
No policy details there, but it doesn't sound like a shift to the left, does it? In fact, it sounds like Peter Dutton will get into some policy differentiation with Labor and will shift the party back to the traditional centre-right. Let's discuss another perspective on all that now with Deyi, who's the president of the New South Wales Young Liberals. Thanks for joining us, Deyi.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about your perspective of what lessons should be learned from the election defeat.
I think there was too much politicking and not enough substance on policy issues that genuinely improve people's lives, basically. As much as politicians want to believe that voters are disengaged, they still see through the slogans and the scaremongering. You look at the text on election day, the last-minute text about the unauthorised vessels being intercepted. I received it while I was campaigning and I just thought it was cheap, it was disingenuous, and it should not have been something that's paraded around for votes. It
was pretty tacky and it probably didn't win them a vote. I think your general assessment, though, there's too much politicking is dead right. They've started to politic the way Labor has, playing sort of emotional and tactical games rather than going for policy substance. But where you and I might differ is, I think that's what they've done with climate policy. By signing up to net zero by 2050, they just want to really match Labor and the TEALs and the Greens, and they shied away from the solid discussions about energy security, energy costs, and what any of our action would actually do to the climate anyway.
Well, I think the issue of climate change has been bastardised, and I think there are people in our party who have a visceral reaction to the words climate change because I think they should because it's a left issue. I personally don't think conserving the environment and reducing emissions is a left issue. It is fundamentally a conservative principle to ensure that future generations are left in a better state than you were. But where left and right do come in, and that's where the debate hasn't really gone to, is how you implement it. For example, do you raise a carbon tax or do you do it through incentivising private enterprise?
And how quickly you do it. And what's a proportionate response for Australia? Because the point is, whatever we do here and however difficult it is for our economy and therefore people in this country, we know it won't affect the global climate.
Well, I honestly do think that the time is up on debating whether climate change is real or not.
And this is the point. We know global emissions are still increasing. So whatever we do, 1.2% of global emissions and shrinking, we of course want to do our bit proportionately as a nation, but we've got to stop kidding ourselves that our actions will improve the climate.
And that's where I think that by not doing anything is not a solution either.
But how can you say, as a young Liberal, that the government's not doing anything when they've reduced Australia's emissions by 20%, a much larger reduction than most other developed countries?
I will give the government credit, and especially Morrison's government credit, that they now, from there on, there is no major political party in Australia that doesn't agree with reducing net zero by 2050. So that is a major step. And at the time, people were criticising the government on the exact policies. But now we need to offer a concrete plan on decarbonisation. How do we actually support those affected industries and regions and focus on the science?
Wouldn't it be smarter for the Liberal Party to abandon the 2050 commitment, given, of course, the World Energy Forum and others have admitted that we don't have the technology to deliver net zero by 2050?
I don't think we should be abandoning anything. I think we should be offering a practical alternative on what we can actually do to reduce emissions, to decarbonise, to support the energy transition, because if not, we will be unelectable for many years to come.
Hasn't the Liberal Party and the coalition moved too far to the left? They've matched net zero by 2050. They've increased spending to record levels. Debt's gone to record levels. Where has the Liberal Party over the past term actually supported and introduced a right-of-centre policy?
I mean, I agree with you, and I do think that...
Look what happened. Look what it led to.
I agree in the sense that we need to be focusing on middle Australia. And when I say middle Australia, that doesn't necessarily mean lurching to the left. It means focusing on the issues that actually impact majority of Australians. They don't want issues like housing affordability, climate change, tax reform, paying government debt to be politicised. They just want their elected representatives to be addressing it in good faith, because that's what their job is.
Deyi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Deyi Wu there, who's the president of the New South Wales Young Liberals.